Hey everyone, Rob from Southgate Media Group here. Before we get started with this podcast, we have a quick message. If this is your first time checking out the show, we love that you found us and we really hope you enjoy it. What we have to say is for the subscribers. If you enjoy our shows, would you please donate to help keep these going? We don't want to have to put traditional ads on these shows, but this does cost money. So we really do rely heavily on donations. To make a donation to the show, please go to our website, www.southgatemediagroup.com. Go to the page for the show, and in the upper right-hand corner is a donate button. It takes you right to PayPal, and you can donate whatever amount you want. Thanks a lot for listening, everybody. And now on with the show.
Welcome to the second ever installment of You Got or You Got GOT, Sophia's Game of Thrones podcast, a Southgate Media Group production. I'm your humble host, Sophia Porter, and I'm here today to talk about the Season 5, Episode 1, The Wars to Come. But guess what? I'm not alone. Nope. That's right, guys. My first ever guest, he is on the podcast today, and now I'm going to introduce him. He's my sage, my guiding light, unless I douse madmen. That's right, it's Kyle Tremblay. Kyle, hello, and welcome to the podcast.
Oh, Sophia, let me just tell you, it is an honor of the highest order to be your first ever guest on You Got.
How could I?
Game of Thrones podcast.
Honestly, how could it not be you? You're the one that helped me, sort of set it up. So I feel like it would be a dishonor.
Well,
a disservice to have you on. So first, before we delve into the episode, which I'm sure we're going to have a lot to talk about, I sort of just want the listeners to get to know you a little better. And this is going to happen every single time a guest comes on. I'll probably change up the questions a little bit. But just as a basic sort of question in terms of Game of Thrones, you have to tell me who you want to sit on the Iron Throne.
First of all, when you said you wanted to get me to know me better, I thought you were going to give me a chance to plug my website or something. But no, we're just going right.
No, that happens. That happens at the end.
My mistake. Sorry for the
Gosh, Kyle.
Voice.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. I've got to work. I got to work for the plug.
You do. You really do.
Okay, so the question was who I want to sit on the Iron Throne.
Yes, your personal opinion. Who do you want to? I mean, they can be dead.
Wait, their corpse sit on the Iron Throne?
Yes. I mean, just who your favorite person is that you want to sit on the Iron Throne. They can be dead. I mean, obviously, I have a soft spot for Robb Stark, but now I'm Stannis, so whatever.
Oh, you switched allegiances.
Well, I had to, given the fact that Robb Stark is dead.
I thought death wasn't a disqualifier from this conversation.
I mean. You're talking me in circles, Kyle. Come on now.
I'm just stalling for time as I think of my answer.
You asked me not to prep you.
Yeah, I know. I regret that decision. I really liked the minute that Ned Stark sat on the throne, right? While Robert was out hunting. Ned got to hear audiences and do kingly things and send a hit squad after the mountain, which I always approve of.
Because the mountain just sucks.
Yeah, he's the worst.
Plain and true, he just sucks.
He just sucks. And so I mean, Ned sat on the throne for 3 hours, and in those 3 hours, sent Beric Dondarrion after him. So I got to approve of that, and just approve of Ned Stark in general. So I kind of wish that he had that he had maybe listened to Renly's advice on the night of Robert's death and not been so honor bound for maybe just that 1 minute.
Yeah, that's the problem with Ned. That was what got him in the end, was his honor. Even though, honestly, you'll hear me talk about his death for hours on end, but, my biggest problem was they stripped him of his honor at the very end and then killed him. He didn't even get a chance to be psych. Nope. Head chopped. Done.
That was the lesson, right? Is that even when he was willing to sacrifice his honor, Ned couldn't save himself.
Exactly. Seriously heartbreaking. That was the time. That was when the show changed. Obviously, was when Ned Stark died. Yes. You kill off the main protagonist.
Well, from strictly a show perspective, I mean that's never been done before.
Yeah.
For the protagonist to be killed in the 9th episode of the first season.
Yep. I mean, Sean Bean's name was first in the game in the theme.
Yeah,
his name was the first name you saw.
He was the star of the show. He was the central narrative character.
Yep.
And that just that's never done. And I mean, obviously they could do it because we have these books, and so Game of Thrones, the TV show, has a track to follow. But for me, who was not a book reader at the time, that was utterly shocking.
Yes. I knew it was coming. I got into Game of Thrones, like, a little late. Like, I got in right before season 3 was airing. And so I binge watched season 1, but being on Tumblr and being on social media, you sort of find things out.
Yes.
And so I knew Ned Stark was going to die. I just didn't want to believe it. And I fell in love with him anyway. And then
you couldn't help yourself.
I couldn't. Sean Bean, man. I don't know what it is. You know, Sean Bean. That's all I can say. Okay, so moving on to my next question for you, Kyle.
Okay.
Realistically, this is realistically, like, straight up, which house would you be in? Try not to play favorites. I know you love House Stark. Like, I know that. Who doesn't? Yeah. But you gotta, like, just realistically, like, where you're from, consider the houses a little bit. Mm-hmm. Like, obviously, I know I'm a Tully. Like, I know that. I believe it deep down. I mean, if I'm not a Seaworth, like, because let's be real, I'm not weather beaten.
You aren't?
No, alas, I am not.
This is tough.
I know.
It's tough. I don't think, if I'm being brutally honest with myself, I have the rigid moral code of the Starks. I feel like I'm too pragmatic to be a Stark. I mean,
that's a good thing to know about yourself, though.
It's just a reality check, you know.
Yep.
I don't think I'm cunning, but I also don't think I'm so honor bound that I can't see the big picture.
Right.
Which is both the Stark's greatest trait and greatest weakness. I'm not a Tully, I don't think.
That's okay. Not many. You know what? Not many can be Tullys.
Fair enough.
I'm kidding.
I see the point. I have lived my whole life in San Diego. So not exactly a harsh
environment.
Place to be.
Nope.
Yeah, I feel like I might be maybe the Reach or the Stormlands would be kind of my thing. Like, I feel like I might be kind of like a in like of a similar tone to like Renly Baratheon.
I was going to say, you're either Tyrell or Baratheon.
Yes.
I would argue.
I feel like the Tyrells are a little more politically ambitious than I am.
Mm-hmm. Well, like the Baratheons literally want to be king, so, I mean...
Yes, but Renly just wanted to be king for the sake of being king.
Yeah.
Like, just because it was kind of a chill thing to do.
It was fun.
It was fun, yeah.
He's the youngest. He can do what he wants.
Yeah, I feel like that's probably a Baratheon, but not of the Stannis line, more of the Renly side of things.
I mean, Renly's great. I mean, he made my top 25.
Yeah, absolutely. He's one of my very favorites.
Yes.
I was very, very sad when Melisandre took him off the game board.
I know, right? And, I mean, a quick side note, Kyle and I actually did a whole thing where we ranked our favorite Game of Thrones characters.
We did.
We did it for point of view characters in A Song of Ice and Fire, and then we did was it Game of Thrones or All Told?
All A Song of Ice and Fire characters.
All A Song of Ice and Fire characters. And then we did a top 25, right?
Yeah.
Of all of them, of both Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire. And then we narrowed down, or what do? We like compared and created a top. Them. Yeah, we created a top 25 list.
Yes, or we weighted your rankings 50% and my rankings 50%, and we made an overall top 25. Of our mutual rankings.
We spent 3 hours on that
for exclusively the benefit of ourselves.
Yes, we did not do it for any reason other than that.
Nope.
There was no like, we'll post this online and then we'll get people angry or riled up. Nope. Strictly because we wanted to.
That we both write for the website tvbinges.com, and yet we spent a long time on this piece of content that we did not publish.
Yep. I mean, we could. If there's any interest in it, we'll publish it. But, you know, I mean, I think people will be upset because, like, Tyrion and Arya aren't our number one. And they're huge fan favorites. Like, the fan favorites are definitely not even close to... Like, Tyrion's on our list.
Yeah, he had a respectable showing. I think... I mean, the sort of metrics we used for the list were not well established. On purpose.
Yep.
We're just sort of our favorite characters. And so a lot of minor characters are there, and I feel like that's the fun way to do it. Because, I mean, if you're, like, really taking it seriously, like if you're voting for MVP, like in a sports league or something, then yeah, you've got to be serious. A thing like Tyria, or it would be just a list of the most important characters.
Right, and that's not what we wanted to do. We wanted to do,
fun.
Who are the characters that reached out and, like, touched your heart?
Absolutely.
Or made you hate them.
Right.
More than anything, which goes for my number 2. So quickly, Kyle and I can, so you guys can get to know us like a little better, we can give our top 3, right? Can you do that off the top of your head?
Can I do it off the top of my head?
I don't know.
I could give you my top 2 at least.
I can definitely give the top 2. I'm trying to think of my top third. Oh, I know my top 3. Yeah, I got it. Nailed it.
I got it. No, I got it.
Okay, so do you want to say your top 3, or do we want to go 3, 3, 2, 2, 1, 1?
My number 3.
Your number 3. All right.
Olenna Tyrell.
Yes.
The what is it? The Lady of
Thorns. Yeah. The Queen of Thorns. Yep.
The Queen of Thorns. Just a boss.
She's so cool. She was my 5th, I think. So, like, we ranked her pretty high. Like, definitely.
She is at every moment. And, like, I feel like she's a boss in the books. But then, like, on the TV show, that took it to another level.
Yep.
Because every single line of hers is just dripping with sarcasm, dripping with, like, polite condescension.
Yep.
And the way that, I mean, the fact that Cersei hates her automatically bumps her way up in my books.
Yeah.
And just the fact that she's not afraid of Cersei and has sort of seen it all and just doesn't care anymore.
Yep.
I am on board the Olenna Tyrell train.
And, you know, Marjorie gets a lot of it, and I think that's, like, super important, is that we get a little more of Olenna Tyrell with Marjorie Tyrell. And that's also something that's really cool. My third favorite character was totally usurped by the second. She was my second favorite character for pretty much the entirety of the books. And a lot of people are going to raise their eyebrows because they don't like her. And I don't know why, but it's Catelyn Stark. Catelyn Stark is my lady. She's
your queen.
My queen, my number one, the mother, the wonderful mom who did so much for her kids. Like, I love her so much, and I could dedicate an entire podcast to talking about why she's so important and why, like, people shouldn't hate on her. But for the sake of time, and given the fact that we haven't even gotten to our first segment yet, like,
nope.
You know, I think maybe, you know, I'll save it for another time. If there's any interest in that, I would love to do that, because, like, that woman to me is just incredible. And, you know, given who I placed as number 2 is only because of how much I feel for her. Yeah, and that'll make more sense as my number 2, which I can say right now if you want.
Say it.
My number 2, obviously, maybe it's been, I don't know if you guys will guess it, but it's Tywin Lannister. My main man, who no one understands why I love him, and I'm like, you guys, look at the man. He's behind everything.
I feel like Tywin in the TV shows, with the help of Charles Dance, really
came to life.
I would say transcended Tywin in the books.
I think so too.
He's great in the books, but seeing that character come alive on TV and just seeing him sit at wooden tables
and write,
and just put people in their place,
it was amazing,
incredible. And it's just incredible.
And, like, on one of my favorite theories, and I'm going to talk a little bit about theories later, but we'll just go into this one right now, is that Tywin actually knew about the plot to kill Joffrey and let it happen anyway, because Joffrey was harder to control than Tommen would be. And that's, like, one of my favorite theories, because it's just like, oh my god, that man is actually evil. But he's neutral evil. Like, he's like, yeah, sure, he won't do it. He won't bloody his hands, but he'll know about it.
Well, he's someone who is a pragmatist to the point of distaste.
Yes.
You know, like for example, something we saw in this first episode, which I assume in like an hour we're going to get to.
Well, yeah, maybe one day.
That you know, he arranged this horrible match between Cersei and Sir Loras, and it's like those two.
They hate each other.
They hate each other. They don't match up at all. It'll go terribly. But he's only thinking about the big picture. He knows
they need the Tyrells.
They need the Tyrells, and that's the easiest way to do it. And no one's happy about it, but it's the most politically expedient move.
Exactly.
And so that's Tywin. You know, always making the politically expedient move. And so I fully subscribe to the idea that he knew Joffrey was going to die, and he looked at the landscape. You know that he didn't forget about Joffrey overriding everybody and beheading Ned Stark.
Right. Once he did that, the warning signs flared. He was just like, oh, no. This kid's got to go. This kid's got to go.
Yeah, and so it took, to take Tywin off the board, it took someone making a decidedly non-political maneuver. Because Tywin would never account for it, right? His own son with a crossbow at night. Tywin, had it been some elaborate plot, Tywin would have sniffed it out in a second.
Right. It had to be Tyrion on that night with him on the shitter.
Yes, right. And a move hatched only by Tyrion in the moment.
Exactly. All of those actions of Tyrion are totally in the moment and totally unlike a Lannister, which is sort of like conniving and like planned, methodical. And there's that whole thing, and that's why it was so surprising.
Yep, and it's just the one time he got caught literally with his pants down.
Literally with his pants down. Okay, so give me your second. We'll speed it up a little bit.
My second. I should give you my second and my first.
Okay, let's do it.
We're going to be like
Everybody knows my first. It's Davos, and we have an entire time to talk about him. It's a segment. So
we have a segment to talk about
Davos Seaworth forever number one. So you go ahead, second and first.
Very quickly, my number two, Tormund Giantsbane.
Yep.
I adore the man. I think I love him on the show. I think in the books he's actually just a force of nature.
Yes.
Every single line he has in the books is hilarious and makes me laugh.
And for those of you, I'm sure you know who Tormund is. He's a wildling. He's sort of rides with Jon Snow and Mance Rayder and Ygritte. He's got a great beard.
A ginger.
He's a ginger, and he's now at Castle Black.
Yes, he is now poised, I think, to become a very important figure in the show,
I agree.
which delights me to no end.
Yes, me too.
My number one, the man himself, Barristan the Bold.
Barristan!
I love Barristan. I just, and it's really, I mean, I like him on the show, but book Barristan is where it's
so
at.
Good. That man takes control.
Yeah, and his book 5 performance, which we don't need to talk
Top
about.
Notch.
It'll probably coming.
It'll
be coming later this season, but
it'll be at least in season 6, if not this season.
Yes, right. We'll see it at some point on the show, but when we start getting Barristan chapters, things get good.
So true. And you get to see Daenerys from a different light, because the entire time we've been seeing Daenerys from Daenerys' perspective.
From her own perspective.
And that's one of the reasons that Barristan is so important.
Hugely important. So I love Barristan. I love everything about Barristan. He's my number one.
As do I. All right. So now it's finally time to talk about the season 5 premiere.
The premiere!
The Wars to Come.
Do we do that?
No, we don't have to do it. We don't have to do it. We're good. So this episode was titled The Wars to Come, and it's written by D.B. Weiss and Benioff.
David Benioff, yeah.
Yep.
The showrunners.
The showrunners, the creators of Game of Thrones, not of, because we know George R. R. Martin, but whatever. So I'll quick, where we left off in season 4, Arya was en route to Braavos. Varys successfully smuggled Tyrion off to Pentos. And himself, which was surprising for us book readers, because he does not go in the books. And Stannis and his army, a.k.a. Davos, made their splashy and flashy entrance in the north by, taking down the wildlings.
They came in like a wrecking ball.
They did. Oh, God, Kyle.
I'm just sharpshooting here. You keep going.
God. Daenerys is still in Marine. Still.
for what feels like 10 years.
Yep. Sansa is with creepy Uncle Peter Baelish, who is more like an uncle in the books. Not he's much creepier in the show. And Cersei and Jaime are reeling from the death of their father. Or haven't reeled, they haven't found out. But, anyway, that's where they are. So
the reeling begins in this episode.
The reeling does, even though Jaime wasn't in it. Or no, he was. He had a little bit in it. He was, barely in it.
Yeah.
Okay. So, let's start with it. And you feel free to chime in whenever. So, essentially, this episode started off with a flashback, which is really, new, because they've never done it before. That's the first one ever. And it shows little Cersei and her friend Melara, who isn't actually named in the show, but in the books her name is Melara, who Cersei doesn't actually like, which is funny. And they are in the woods walking to a witch named Maggie. And then Maggie's like, yo, I can tell you your future. And Cersei's like, okay. Right?
That dialogue that you're quoting.
Yes, I could be a writer for Game of Thrones, obviously, with my stellar dialogue. Yeah. So Maggie reveals to Cersei some things that we already know about her. She will become queen and have 3 kids. Then we learned that they're gonna die. And we've seen
Yep.
one of these happen when Joffrey died. So sad. Not really. We're all okay. But I think that means we might be saying goodbye to Tommen and Marcella. Who knows? But at least we're going to get to see Marcella in this season. She's been gone for so long. And then, even more importantly, Maggie tells Cersei that she will be overthrown by a younger and more beautiful queen.
Which could be Marjorie.
Which could be Marjorie or Daenerys. Now, obviously, the obvious choice is Marjorie, because we literally cut to her. Like, we don't cut to her, but we see her directly after this flashback happens.
Yep.
But it's possible that Daenerys is the one that Maggie is talking about, and that's also a question that Cersei has.
But,
yeah.
I think the flashback poses those interesting questions for the future regarding the status of her children and who exactly is going to be Queen of Westeros here shortly. But it's much more interesting, I think, in terms of explaining Cersei's mindset for these last 5 seasons.
Yes.
The idea that
she's always known.
Yeah, her fanatical commitment to Joffrey and her children, you know, and protecting Joffrey and taking his side always wasn't just motherly love.
Yes.
There was something else behind
that.
There
was a huge, need and desire to keep them alive.
And it explains her instant hatred of Marjorie, that it's not just petty jealousy.
No, she actually thinks that this girl is going to usurp her.
Right. And the fact that part of that prophecy came true with Joffrey's death has, in a way, unmoored her. That now, you know, that the prophecy is now trending towards happening, and she's powerless to stop it. And that, I think, helps explain the fact that she's now drinking gallons of wine every day. And starting to make worse decisions incrementally.
Exactly. I mean, you're right. I mean, even in the way that she treated everyone just in this episode, right? Even with Jaime, she's not as kind or loving, especially with Loras, who she straight up ignores, and with Marjorie.
Even Jaime, who's not a politically savvy actor, not actor in the show, but an actor in the game, understands what should be done and how she should handle this, and she is too fixated on Tyrion to even worry about that.
Right.
You know, so
yep.
Yeah, so she's already in trouble.
There's definitely Cersei's story is one to keep an eye on. It's, for me, in the books, is one of my favorite stories. Actually, it kept book 4 interesting. Which is a bit of a warning for all of you that haven't yet read book 4. It's a bit slow going. But actually, I wanted to talk a little bit about Melara, Cersei's friend, because obviously she wasn't even named, right?
No. Right.
And this is a bit of a book spoiler, but since it's a flashback, I feel like it's not really a spoiler.
Sure.
So in Martin's original version of the flashback, readers learn that Melara actually died on her way back from meeting Maggie the Frog when she fell into a well and subsequently drowned. So, Kyle, I pose you this question. Do you think that young Cersei had the gall to murder her friend?
Well, it had been prophesied, right? Because in the books, another one of Maggie's prophecies is that her friend is going to die.
Yep.
Right.
She says, one of us here will not survive this, essentially, is what she says.
Right.
In more, magical terms.
Yeah. I'll put it this way. I wouldn't put it past Cersei. I wouldn't rule it out in any stretch. I think that it's left open-ended, but probably knowing what we know about Cersei, it's not an unreasonable assumption that she did murder her friend. Well,
there's also the question of why, and my guess is because Melara was hoping to marry Jaime, right? That was a whole thing in the book. She even, I think she talks about it in the episode. She's like, well, your brother's so handsome. And Cersei's like, yeah, but he's my brother and I'm his twin and you will never be as good as me, essentially. And so the question is whether or not Cersei took matters into her own hand and sort of murdered her friend because she was blocking Cersei's path to Jaime. So that's just an interesting tidbit of information. It's not I didn't want to spend much time on it, but it's something to think about. Is that girl going to come back? Are we going to see her die? Does it matter?
I suspect we're not. I suspect.
Me too.
It's the first flashback the series has done. They're obviously reluctant to do them. I think it was purely to establish. It was to lay the groundwork for Cersei's behavior.
Yes.
Because we can't. It helps explain. It will help explain what's going to happen. I think.
I think so too. Because, like I said, it's pretty great. Okay, so moving on to Pentos. Let's talk a little bit about Tyrion. So
we're crossing the narrow sea.
We are crossing. You know, I'm just going to go back and forth a little bit because, like, I like changing it up. So we're going to go across the narrow sea for a little while at Illyrio's nice house, who we didn't actually get to see Illyrio, but that's okay. In case you don't remember, Illyrio is in season 1, obviously. He's Dany. He gives Dany the dragon eggs. Mm-hmm. Big deal. So he's making his rounds again, even though he wasn't in the episode. He's
also the shadowy figure that Varys is talking to when Arya overhears them in like a deep hallway within the castle, right?
Yes. I think, yeah.
So he has been working with Varys behind the scenes. He seems to me to be the Varys of Essos. Or
he's
of
such
that
a bit
area.
fatter and likes drinking wine.
Right.
So Varys and Tyrion find their way to Pentos. Varys on a boat, Tyrion on a boat in a box. And after a bunch of quipping back and forth, which was great.
So
Seriously,
happy.
That scene, just their back and forth when Tyrion says the future is shit just like the past. I was like, oh my God, like perfect writing. It really speaks a lot of, like, I don't know, it just pays a lot of, I just love Peter Dinklage.
Well,
honestly.
I don't know the actor who plays Varys.
I don't really know him either.
But he is phenomenal.
He is.
And him and Dinklage in extended scenes together is just pure joy.
I never knew it's what I wanted, but now I want it all the time.
Yes. I'm so psyched that those two are going to be spending time together this season.
I am too. If they're going to take out one of my favorite characters in the books, they might as well replace it with Varys and Tyrion.
Yeah.
Like, that's how I feel about that. Like, of anybody to be with Tyrion at this point, Varys is the best one. They have some of the best dialogue in the show. I mean, I was rewatching season 2, and when Tyrion tricks Pycelle, Varys, and Peter and he figures out which one of them is working for Cersei.
Yes.
Like, that's one of my favorite Tyrion things ever, and even their conversations back then was just perfect.
And they're also two characters who... What we see from Varys in this episode is sort of an unfolding of what his worldview has been this whole time, which is that he just wants peace.
He does.
And that's been sort of a hidden fact because he has all these political games that he has to play. But Tyrion also is sort of, I mean, they're two of the less grim characters on the show. Mm-hmm. You know, like it's not like Stannis being dour. And, like there's so many characters on the show are dour.
Yes.
And Tyrion is so jolly, and Varys is very guarded, but also like optimistic in a way that very few characters on the show are. So seeing these two together, especially once Tyrion sort of, I mean, we saw him sort of perk up, during the conversation. And
dragons, dragons.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Top form Tyrion and Varys are just a sight to behold. And
I totally agree.
It's like a beam of light in this very dark world.
It is. And, it was revealed in this conversation that Varys actually has a reason for leaving. He is all about the Targaryen takeover, right?
Yep.
And it sort of pulls away from his whole true neutral thing that he was playing, because, I love D&D terms. And he was, Varys was always sort of the one that was just like gray, right?
Right.
You've got black and white, Peter and Pycelle, and then there was Varys in the middle. Sort of this, like, I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm just here. I'm keeping the peace. And then you realize everybody's got to back somebody in the Game of Thrones, right?
Yep.
And it's revealed that he backs Daenerys Targaryen.
And he has this entire time.
Yes. So, Kyle, I'll throw it to you a little bit, again, because I'm throwing it back and forth. So how do you... Okay, I know that Varys is one of your favorite characters.
Yeah.
How do you feel about this? Him backing Daenerys? How do you feel about that?
I mean, it's a bit of a departure from the books.
It is a bit of a departure,
but it's in spirit. It's it's reflecting what the books did,
It
which
does.
is that he's in the books. He is a Targaryen supporter. It's just he's supporting a different Targaryen
Right.
who, to this point, does not exist in the show's world.
And we don't know if that character is going to exist.
He
at
might
all.
exist at some
In
point.
season 6, maybe. So we're
Yes,
not giving
right.
anything away, guys. Don't worry.
But yeah, right. But so in the books, he doesn't support Daenerys
Explicitly.
certainly, yeah, in this way. But I just think it makes so much sense because what I think everyone has been asking for the show to do is start overlapping these stories some.
Yes.
And so to tie in Tyrion, basically to fly a care package into Miriam, which has just been so desolate and boring.
Yes.
And I mean, the show is great, and Emilia Clarke's a great actress, and Dario is fun, and like they really populate Miriam with interesting characters, but those characters are doing nothing interesting.
Exactly. Like, I don't even know what happened. I mean, there was nothing plot changing that happened in Daenerys' part in this episode, essentially.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
No.
We'll get
And
to
that's
that.
been
But like
the case for a while now. It's
yes.
just nothing.
And that's how it is in the books.
Yes, right. That's
Daenerys doesn't move for 2 books. She stays in Marine, just hanging out, and you're like, oh my god.
Which is
Oh my
very
God.
frustrating. And so here comes Benioff and Weiss here, flying a helicopter with Tyrion and Varys in the box and just dropping them in the center of Meereen.
Honestly, it's all Marine ever needed.
Yeah, it's all they ever needed. I mean, you put those two with Daenerys and Barristan and Grey Worm and the whole cast and crew there, and suddenly everything is 1,000 times more interesting.
Yeah,
And
I
so
mean, the question is, how are they going to get there, right? Because we've still got this whole journey. Tyrion's in Pentos. She's in Marine.
Yes.
Marine's
It's a
pretty
ways
far away from Pentos. That's a boat ride away. And
Yeah.
some more boats, right? And
Yeah, so we've
in
got
the
a journey up
trailer, we saw Tyrion seeing Drogon.
Mhm.
Granted, that could have been just really good editing. We don't
Yes.
know, but there's a possibility.
Drogon is not in Meereen.
Drogon is not in Marine. Nope.
Yeah.
We don't know where
is
Drogon
flying
is.
around the countryside.
He could be in Westeros for all we
Yeah.
know, right?
No one knows where Drogon is, least of all Dany.
Right, exactly. Okay, good job, Mom. Good job. Like, way to keep it holding your dragons there, right? But I would love to see Tyrion and Dany and Varys and Barristan
Yes.
just like have one conversation. I don't know if it's gonna happen. It doesn't. I mean, it's different in the books, like I said, and like you said, it's radically different. But there's always that possibility, and for me, that breathes a whole new breath of life. Like, that is a whole new breath of life that the show will get if we get those characters together. Because it gives Dany something to do other than be awesome.
Yes, right, exactly.
Because she's awesome. There's no denying that Daenerys is amazing and an incredible woman. Like, I love her, female power all the way. But my God, do something, right?
Yeah, she needs something to do.
So I'm hoping that maybe
other than Dario.
Other than so good. So thank you. Anyway, so let's move on to Dany, actually, because we did get to catch up with her, and given the fact that she was in every single premiere trailer, like, I thought she would have a sort of major play in this episode, but she doesn't really.
No.
Kyle, do you want to take us through a little bit about what happens to Dany?
Yeah, so we meet, essentially we're introduced to the Sons of the Harpy, which are a shadowy organization within Meereen, working to overthrow Dany. And we're introduced to them because one of her Unsullied, White Rat, is it?
White Rat.
White Rat.
Yes.
Goes for some cuddle time at the brothel. Which
like
is all
you
they
do.
can really do.
Like you do.
Yep.
Like they can do.
Like all they can do.
That's all they can do, yeah.
Paying a reduced rate, I hope. And gets his throat slit by the Sons of the Harpy.
Which are guys in bronze masks. Bronze animal masks. I don't know if they're animal masks in the show, but they are in the books.
Yes. And so we are introduced to that conflict that Dany now has to deal with while still seated in Meereen. Don't worry, she hasn't moved yet.
Yeah. Fear not, guys.
Then later we are introduced to, I don't know if this is it Hizdahr Zolorak's
I think that
appearance?
was. No, he shows up once before, as someone told me. I didn't think he did. It shows how much attention I paid to Hizdahr before this. But yeah, we see Hizdahr.
Yes. So Hizdahr is a powerful, influential noble in Meereen.
His Darzo Lorak. Yep.
Yeah, he wants to reopen the fighting pits, which Dany had shut down because they were barbaric. But he makes the case that they're a part of Meereen culture. Dany refuses him, tries to get... Later on, when she's in bed with Dario, tries to get his support for it, and Dario basically tells her, no, you should totally reopen the fighting pits.
Those things made me.
Yes, it made me, and are a crucial part of our culture. And that maybe if you're going to conquer us,
you might want to do something good. Like,
Instead of, we'll make a concession.
Right.
And it's a sort of metaphor, I think, for not to get too political, but for sort of the imperialism in the world, which is the idea that you can go in and fundamentally change a nation without any respect for that nation's customs, and the problems that are associated with that.
Honestly, Dario makes a very strong point. I mean, like, I know why the fighting pits are gross. They are. I mean, pitting people against each other in a fight to the death and having people watch and throw money. Like, no, that's not really something you want to do, but it is part of Meereenese culture. And in order for her to sort of become the conqueror of all of these different cities across the Narrow Sea, she's got to do something that makes her worthy, right?
Well, and she's the conqueror because she has dragons, although as we find out in her last scene of the episode, those dragons do not seem to respect her at this point.
Nope.
And she does not have control over them. But she's the conqueror because she has them. But to be a ruler, you need to have some buy-in from your subjects. You can't just conquer them and change everything about their lives and expect everything to be okay.
Right.
And so that's what Dany...
she'll come to realize it, hopefully.
Yeah, is on pace to learn, is that in order to rule effectively, you can't just impose your beliefs, whole cloth on these people that you conquered. You have to have a bit of respect for them. Exactly.
And I think that is going to be an interesting Dany journey, apart from her trying to, be mother of the dragons again.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I'm interested to see where Jorah will show up, because we know where he shows up in the books, but where he shows up in the show is going to be different. I know in the trailer we saw him in the fighting pits, but I'm not quite sure what's going to happen there, because in the show, in the books, he and Tyrion team up. Well, team up, that's loosely speaking, but they do get together, and that's like one of my favorite things, because, well, Jorah in the books I really don't like, but Jorah in the show I love, and maybe that has to do with my attraction to Ian Glenn. I don't know, but I'm missing my man. So, but I do think it's going to be really interesting to see sort of what's going to happen to Dany in this season, how it's going to end, and where, if she's going to grow and learn, and what she's going to do. She's going to have to make sacrifices. We know it, having read the books, we know it by watching the show. Dany can't, she has to change.
Well, and the perfect character, in theory, to effect that change is Tyrion. Yes. The most cunning and willing to compromise politically character there is.
Yep.
Someone who will roll with the punches better than anyone, and could maybe provide Dany with a little bit of perspective.
It all comes back around, Kyle. It all comes back around.
It does. Right? It does.
Okay, so let's briefly glance over Sansa, who has now journeyed beyond A Dance with Dragons. Not The Winds of Winter, obviously, since you read that chapter. I have not read it yet.
Yeah.
She watches as Robin Arryn fails to sword fight, while Peter Baelish breathes into her ear creepily.
Oh, Robin.
Oh, Robin. Little Robin Arryn. I don't know how you're going to
I took a little bit of pleasure watching him get his ass
I did, too. Oh, my God, that kid's so gross. I'm sorry. Honestly, the Arryns creep me out, except for Jon, who we never got to know. Like, the Arryns are gross and creepy, and you know what? Peter Baelish pushing her out the moon door wasn't the worst thing to have happened. Like, let's be real. So we got to see Sansa a little bit, and then he tells her that he's taken her somewhere
that we do not know, even as book readers.
And Kyle and I actually talked about this earlier today. Where do we think he's taking her? And we have a few theories, don't we, Kyle?
We do, and I think because the line he gives is he's taking her somewhere that not even Cersei can reach, right? And so that would the first thing that came to my mind, at least, is across the Narrow Sea to Essos. Yes. And that Cersei's reach obviously wouldn't extend that far.
Yep.
So that would, I think, be a logical thing, especially considering that a lot of our characters are migrating that way. Might as well throw Sansa in the mix.
I know. I mean, she could go. She doesn't even have to go to Bravos. She could go anywhere. Volantis. We haven't seen Volantis yet.
Haven't seen Volantis.
We know Volantis is there. Because Talissa's from there, and she died, so we don't get to see that from her perspective. But yeah, it would be really interesting to see Sansa in Essos as well. I have a feeling they're going to stay in Westeros, though.
Sure.
Honestly, I don't think Sansa's. I love what they're doing with her character. I think that her whole reveal that she's Sansa Stark at the end of season 4 was really major and really important for her character, and it made her more interesting. Because obviously, some people get bored with Sansa's storyline. I get it. Yeah. She kind of can whine a lot, but the girl she's still alive. Well, literally almost when most of her family is dead,
Well, and on the show, we got that awesome moment where she, basically at the end of last season during the sort of trial that they had for Baelish, breaks bad, essentially.
Yep, she does. And she breaks bad.
That was a much more pronounced moment in the TV show than in the book.
It was. And it was so important in the TV show.
Yeah, very important, very awesome character turning moment, and so I'm excited about where this could go.
I am too. Whether it's Essos, I'm hoping Skagos will be seen, but I'm also hoping Skagos will be seen by Davos, not just because it rhymes. So that's that's certainly one thing. And then who else did we see? I'm going to skip over. We saw Brienne and Pod for a little while. They were talking about her not being a lord and a lot of stuff. We saw Loras a little bit.
We saw a lot of Loras.
We saw a lot of Loras' friend. We saw weird, strange Lancel Lannister make his rounds again as a sparrow.
Leading Occupy Wall Street protests.
Yep. We also saw Missandei and Grey Worm do their weird little flirty thing that can only end in one way. This is Game of Thrones we're talking about, people.
Dry humping?
Dry humping. Oh, God. Oh, God. But most importantly, who did we see in this episode? Besides Davos. We saw Jon.
I thought you were headed towards Davos.
I was, but we'll get there soon. We saw Jon Snow, who got, his whole, how did you like to call it? Freebird? Last season. He got his
following his
Freebird solo.
Guitar solo for 60 minutes during Watchers on the Wall.
Which is my favorite episode of Game of Thrones.
It's a great episode.
It's so well done. So we got to see Jon Snow again. This time we sort of told what's been going down. Stannis has obviously taken over Castle Black with Davos at his side, because Davos is amazing. But we'll get to that later, because I love him so much that I have an entire segment dedicated to him. And Melisandre shows up and is like, yo, Jon, Stannis wants to talk to you. And so they ride up in an awkward sort of way to the top of the wall, and Melisandre's like, hey, are you a virgin?
Yeah.
And he's like,
cool question.
No. And she's like, okay. I see. Yeah. I see. See, I'm warm. Touch me. Very, very weird stuff. Okay.
They essentially invented awkward elevator rides.
They really did. They really did. And I have an issue with where Melisandre's character is going, but that's something we'll talk about in a Song of Ice and Fire showdown. So essentially, Stannis tells Jon that he's going to swear fealty to him, or that Jon better swear fealty to him, because Stannis is going to take the North away from Roose Bolton, which is a big freaking deal, because that's one of the showdowns that I'm most excited for, as we were talking about earlier today.
Yep.
Because I am ready to see Roose Bolton and Ramsay Bolton, Snow, whatever, get their just desserts.
I want their heads on a pike.
I would like them flayed.
Yeah, good.
That's what I would like. I would like Ramsay to be castrated and Roose to be flayed.
There is no act, including burning alive, which we'll talk about, that would be too awful for Ramsay to suffer.
Seriously. I mean, and the fact that he was, my second least favorite character?
Yeah.
Yeah, we also made a top 3 least favorite characters, just a heads up.
Ramsay's my number 1. Yeah,
Ramsay's his number 1. Walder Frey's mine, because I hate him. He's a pussy. Yeah. Anyway, back to the episode. As it turns...
Taking drive-by shots at the phrase.
Sorry, I hate the phrase. Because he's still alive, too. Okay, anyway. As it turns out, the King Beyond the Wall, one of Kyle's favorite characters, Mance Rayder. Mance Rayder is going to be executed if he doesn't say that Stannis is the liege lord. There's a really great scene between Jon and Mance where Jon essentially begs him to take the knee because he knows that he knows that Mance is going to die if he doesn't. And he's like, there are worse mistakes that you can make. And then Mance had my favorite line of the episode. He goes, "The freedom to make my own mistakes is all I ever wanted." Yeah. And I got chills. I was like, oh my God, like that's huge. That is a huge thing for him to say. And that's the reason he left the Night's Watch in the first place. Yeah. And it all comes back around, and he's not going to stand there and take it from a king that doesn't deserve it, right? Would rather die than not make his own choices.
Well, he made the point that the whole reason the wildlings respect him is that he would never kneel.
Exactly.
And so if he kneeled
now, he would lose all their respect anyway.
It would undermine it. And maybe he's right, maybe he's wrong. But he believes it, and it's very Stark of him.
It is very Stark of him. I mean, I know that Ned Stark knew him, so that's a thing. Yeah. Just a quick little tidbit of information there. He was around.
And it's just this kind of northern mentality.
It is a northern mentality. Yeah. And so then Mance is walked out onto a pyre to be burned alive in front of everyone at Castle Black. The wildlings, Stannis' troops, the Night's Watch, everybody is there to watch Mance Rayder get burned alive. Davos is there too, just in case you were wondering. Just as Mance starts to scream, an arrow pierces his heart, and he dies in front of everybody without feeling the torture of the flames. And who shot him, Kyle?
Johnny Snowshoes.
Johnny Snowshoes, which I think that that's a great departure from the books. Yeah. George R. R. Martin said that this episode was going to shock book readers, and it shocked me in more ways than one. But that was definitely the most, like, that took me aback the most, was that in the books he burns. Jon does not. Well, okay. We'll get there. Okay. In the books he burns. Jon does not shoot him. No. Jon watches it happen. Or does he turn away? Whatever, it doesn't matter. He dies by fire. He does not die by arrow. And I think that lays great groundwork for the character that Jon is becoming. It makes me so much more excited to sort of watch him grow as a character because, he can't just be at Castle Black forever, right? Like, he's gotta, if he's going to be at Castle Black, he's gotta sort of man up a little bit. And I think that this was the beginning of something great. And I think Melisandre sees it too, which is also a terrifying thought.
Well, and that whole interaction, the whole dance between Stannis, Jon, and Mance is the rare negotiation on this show that takes place between parties that like and respect each other. Yes. And they're all on different sides of this. Yep. And they're all at odds, but there's an underlying respect there, and like that conversation between Jon and Mance, where Jon is trying to save his life, basically, is I think Jon Snow's best moment on the show. I think so too. I know that Watchers on the Wall was an amazing action episode,
but it wasn't just about him. That episode was not about Jon Snow. That episode was about the Night's Watch.
It was like an action movie.
Exactly.
And this was a Jon Snow character moment where he's trying to save this guy and trying to get him to see reason, and Mance totally understands what he's saying and just won't budge. And in the end, Jon has to watch him burn, but he doesn't have to, the only thing he can do is save him from that death that he clearly was scared of.
Right. Because you can tell when he's on that pyre, there is fear bleeding out of him. I mean, it is. Yeah. And Jon realizes it. And Jon is like, okay, all right, I can do this one last thing for you, man. It's like, you didn't kill me when you had the chance. You took me hostage. You treated me well. You treated me fairly. And this is not the way you're going to die. I'm not going to let you die without pride and without honor. That's just, and he shoots him, and I think that is great, and it honestly, it moves Jon up on my character list. I did put him in my top 25, but I put him at 18, but I think that the way in which they've changed him is so interesting and so wonderful. He is hardened now. And
well, he's also I think probably feeling a bit empowered by the events of Watchers on the Wall, the way that he led.
Yes.
And we saw him, when he's first introduced to this episode, we see him, actively training recruits. Ollie,
yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And so he's taking on a leadership role, and we're also introduced
all to foreshadowing, my friends. All of this foreshadowing.
We're introduced to the idea that there's going to be an election.
Yes,
for the
that is mentioned. Alistair Thorne says that he's running. Can I just say, because we talked about this a little earlier today, I was really happy with the Watchers on the Wall, the way they ended up portraying Alistair Thorne. He's a dick. Look, there's no denying that this guy's a dick. He's had it out for Jon Snow. He and Janos Slynt have had it out for Jon Snow since Jon got there. And Alistair, in the middle of the Watchers on the Wall, when he hits the ground, and, you know, the wildlings and the Threns are, like, overrun. Like, they're overpowering everybody. He says, we are the Night's Watch. We will not go down like this. And he makes this great speech, this heroic speech. And I was like, oh my God, I'm actually feeling something for Alistair Thorne. Like, I never thought this was possible. Because I thought he died.
Right.
And then he's alive. And I was like, wow, I felt so betrayed. I was like, you guys, like, I felt bad for this guy. I felt like I was rallying behind him. And now I feel like what did you say? That I'm just supporting his cause? Like,
you were supporting him against Jon Snow.
Exactly. So
he's right back to where he was, you know.
So that was really frustrating.
That moment of redemption, and now he's right back where he was.
Exactly. But you know what? It makes sense in the fact that there is now going to be a rush for power for the slot of Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. And the question is, who is going to run against Alistair Thorne? And I think we all know the answer to that. But the question is, will Jon do it? Or will Alistair Thorne win out? And that's going to be a huge deal also, on top of Stannis, on top of Melisandre, on top of Roose Bolton in the north. Like, poor Jon is just like, everybody from all sides, like, is attacking him on some level. Like, even if they do respect him, he's in the middle of all of it. So I'm really excited to see Jon's storyline. I know we're not going to get another episode like The Watchers on the Wall for at least a season. But I'm really excited to see that. So that's Jon. So Kyle, overall, I'll ask you to rate the episode later, but were you a fan of The Wars to Come?
Absolutely. I thought this was a great episode. I think it's it wasn't like one of the legendary Game of Thrones episodes, but it wasn't intended to be.
No, it was supposed to be a setup episode. Yeah. It was like, okay, here are these characters, you haven't seen them for a year, here's where they're at. Here's where their heads are, here's where their bodies physically are, like, and we're just reminding you, it's not going to be gentle, there's got to be death, but, like, we're reminding you what's going to happen in this season.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought it did exactly what it intended to do, which is set up the season, make us interested, remind us all why we love Game of Thrones, and get us super excited.
Perfect. All right, so now it's time to move on to my personally favorite segment. It'll be a short one.
I wonder what this is.
No, I know. It's called Davos Talk. I'm trying to find a better name for it, Kyle. If you have any suggestions, or anybody, if you have any suggestions, throw them at me.
I think Davos Talk is the name that the segment deserves.
Okay, good. I mean, it's literally, that's what it is.
Yeah.
We talk about Davos. And it won't be that long. Pretty much all I have to say is that, yes, Davos was in this episode. And he obviously took every scene. He stole every scene he was in. Because that's just the magical force that is Liam Cunningham. However, I have a big fear for Davos this season. And it strays pretty far from what the books did, and I'm worried because the show is obviously disassociating itself from the books a bit. I'm worried that they're going to turn Davos into a lapdog for Stannis. In the books, he has, like, a really incredible journey, and given the fact that we've only seen one episode, like, I'm not worried yet, but they're definitely switching events around, right? And if Jon and Tormund sail to Hardhome, there's a huge chance that Davos will ride with Stannis to Winterfell. And, like, the thing is, I doubt Davos started growing on you, Kyle, until you saw him outside of, like, Stannis' walls. Yeah. And the only way that you guys as listeners and lovers of Game of Thrones will get to know him as we, the book readers, did, is if he gets some solar screen time. So I guess that's my biggest worry with this coming season, because I don't know what they have planned for him. What do you think, Kyle?
I think the show is very smart about, and picks and chooses its spots when to consolidate material and when to really blow it out. Mm-hmm. And I think Davos is too good a character to be wasted in a sort of minor role. Mm-hmm. And the show has been good about, keeping stuff for him to do, and I don't think the show will shy away from. I mean,
he did have Blackwater, so
yeah, right. I just don't think the show will shy away from giving him a story.
Yeah.
And it's, like you said, in the books, it's so good. And
So
I'm sure the details will change.
Yes.
But just the idea of Davos being sent out into the world is
right, because he does get sent out. He gets sent out to find Stannis more troops. That's like a very important. He does in season 2 when he goes to the pirate guy Salador. That's his name, I believe. Yeah. Salador Son. I believe, I'm hoping that Stannis will do the same thing. Stannis also does have an attachment to Davos, and obviously Shireen is a big deal to Davos as well. So like leaving her is going to be pretty hard. But I hope that they follow with the books in Davos' storyline, because it's my favorite one. Not just because Davos is my favorite character, but it's one of the most interesting ones, and it definitely like takes you on twists and turns that you wouldn't expect Davos to go on.
He's also Stannis' best diplomat in the sense that he's the hand of the king.
Right, he can talk about Stannis. Yeah,
he's more. He's has a bigger title at least than any of Stannis' other, the knights that serve under him,
right.
And he is the person that Stannis trusts most, I would imagine, with sort of diplomatic tasks.
Yep.
And no matter what show or book, Stannis is going to have to win the North somehow. He's not going to sweep through the North like he swept through the Wildlings. That much is obvious.
Right.
So he's going to need support from Northern Lords. And so there's going to be a diplomatic component to this. And it's hard for me to imagine Stannis turning to anyone but Davos
Me too.
to help accomplish that.
That's my hope. My hope is that he's going to stick around and be as important. But with the introduction of new characters, you never know. Okay, so we'll move on now. I know I mentioned in the first ever episode, which was literally like yesterday, that I was going to do fan theories. And I'm not going to delve into any really complicated ones right now, but I sort of just wanted to give you guys like a brief overview of the ones that I believe in. I said already, I believe that Tywin knew about the Joffrey death plot, but one that I'm sure many of you, and Kyle included, believe is that of R plus L equals J. I'm sure you saw it coming, Kyle. And I'm completely on board with it. Kyle, feel free to jump in with anything I might leave out. I'm not sure how much you know. But like, a brief overview is essentially this. Instead of Jon being Ned Stark's son, he's actually the love child of Prince Rhaegar Targaryen and Eddard's sister Lyanna, who are both deceased. See, way back in the old days, there was a tournament held at the castle of Harrenhal to celebrate spring finally coming to Westeros. However, the tourney's ending was a lot less joyful, because after Rhaegar won it, he was to give the rose that he won at the end, I think it was a rose or it was a crown, I'm pretty sure it was a rose, to his wife, the Dornish princess Elia Martell, who was killed by the mountain. Just connections. Rhaegar rode straight past her and gave it to Lyanna instead. And Ned Stark would later recall this moment as the moment when all smiles died, because you can see how messed up that is, right? Like, oh my God, Rhaegar, like, I get that you're hot, but seriously, man? Like, what the hell? And I think he was 16 or so at the time, and Lyanna was like 14. They're all really young in the show. Okay, so after a small amount of time, Lyanna was abducted, never to be seen again, and many people thought that Rhaegar was behind it. Robert especially, and that sort of was one of the reasons that Robert started the rebellion, was because, like, Lyanna, who he was betrothed to, Robert Baratheon, y'all know who I'm talking about, he's dead now too. Everybody in this is dead pretty much already. So Robert starts the rebellion. He refuses to swear fealty to Aerys, the Mad King, and goes on a rampage. So the theory states that Lyanna went with Rhaegar willingly to the Tower of Joy, where they held out for a while until Rhaegar had to leave her to defend his family's dynasty. Meanwhile, at the Battle of the Trident, Rhaegar is slain by Robert, and Ned makes his way to the tower, where he finds Lyanna dying in a pool of her own blood. Many fans believe that the blood was actually childbirth, and the promise that Ned makes to his dying sister is that he will take the baby, a.k.a. Jon Snow, as his own son. Because we all know that if Robert Baratheon had found out about a little baby Targaryen, he would have killed it no matter what, right? Smashed it against a wall. So Jon Snow was raised as Ned Stark's bastard, and when Ned died, so did that secret. I don't know, Kyle, how do you feel about that?
Makes total sense to me. I think the books are very strongly hinting at Jon Snow not being Ned Stark's bastard.
Right.
I think it's very, just the way that anytime the subject is broached, you just get the sense that there's a secret here. Mm-hmm. And
Ned, the way that Ned thinks about it, like, is all just like every time she says, "Promise me, Ned," in his head, it's just like, oh, come on, how could it not be? And it's the guilt he feels for lying to Catelyn and lying to Robb and Jon. Like, it's definitely hinted at. I think, and we're going to explore it in the show too.
And we saw, like, we were just talking about with Cersei, where her fanatical commitment to her children is explained not just by her motherly love, but by this prophecy that's revealed later.
Right.
Likewise, I feel like Ned's blatant, utter refusal to ever talk about Jon Snow's mother is ostensibly because of he's so ashamed because he broke his honor, but it would make total sense to me for there to be a deeper reason for that.
I mean, he's just such a good person. You do not believe Ned Stark would cheat on his wife, who was pregnant when he left her.
Yeah, I would think he wouldn't, but also it just like I feel like there's more to it than just he is so sore on the subject because he violated his own personal honor. I just feel like there's probably just the way that Game of Thrones goes, when someone feels that strongly about basically an intangible, there's something more going on. There's something there's a motivation there that goes beyond what we know about. And so I feel like Ned was keeping a secret, and that's why he is so steadfast in refusing to talk about it.
Yep. Honorable Ned Stark, man. Just
yeah.
Damn him. I love him so much. That's why he's 6th on my favorite character list. Okay, so now we'll do a quick rundown because we're at an hour, I'm pretty sure, so we're getting up there. This will be the final segment just because it's the first episode and I don't want to get into all of reactions and stuff this episode because it's really complicated. But essentially, it's now the Song of Ice and Fire versus Game of Thrones SmackDown with one major topic. That is the death of Mance Rayder and the change in Melisandre's character. So if you guys don't want to hear this, I would say tune out for a little while. Because, like, there are about to be spoilers pretty big, pretty majorly in, which book is it? 4? It's like, it's
4 or 5.
4 or 5. So, okay, so Kyle, let's talk about it. Because this is a huge departure from the books. So essentially in the show, we watch Mance Rayder screaming that he will not be he will not bend his knee. He, like, made his decision. He starts to get burned. Jon shoots him in the heart with an arrow. Pretty much the only same thing that happens is the funeral pyre. That's like the only same thing because in the books, Kyle, do you want to take it?
Yeah, in the books, as we find out later, Melisandre has glamoured Rattleshirt, which was one of Mance's fiercest warriors, to appear to be Mance.
Yep.
And Rattleshirt, as it turns out, is burned.
Yep.
And Mance
goes about looking as Rattleshirt.
Yeah, is glamoured as Rattleshirt, and he is essentially in disguise operating as Rattleshirt, and that is only later revealed to Jon Snow.
Like, way later. Like, everybody... Well, not actually that much later. Pretty soon after, because John's like, yo...
Not far after, but...
Yeah. So Jon Jon has nothing to do... Right. Jon has nothing to do with his death. Jon, and that's what I was talking about, why I think it's such a great thing for them to have done. If they're killing off this character, Mance Rayder, which is heartbreaking because he's a great character, I love him very much, but if they're going to do it, that's the way to do it, is to further Jon's character, right? Kill him off to further a main character. I think that's a super important thing.
It also, that kind of, like... Because, I mean, you just think from a practical perspective, you know, the TV show has all these different characters. They only have an hour to tell the story each week. Yep. They only have 10 episodes each season. The books, George R.R. Martin can write for as long as he wants to.
Mm-hmm. We hope.
Yeah, well, I mean, the books could be as long as he wants them to be, essentially. And so the idea of like, establishing that glamour is a thing, and we learn about, like, we get a Melisandre chapter where we learn about the personal cost to her, that how much power she has to expend to pull something like that off. All of that is extremely interesting, but also extremely hard to establish.
It is, because right now, the way they've taken Melisandre is that she's not a loved character. No one likes her. She has no redeeming qualities except for the fact that she's super hot, right? Yes, and, like, to make her a character that's actually really interesting and intriguing in a way that isn't evil fully, because obviously she saves Mance Rayder for a reason, right? And I think she plays a huge part she's going to play a huge part in the Winds of Winter, given what happens at the end with Jon. I think, like, that's going to be a big deal. But for now, to make her a character that is loved is too complicated. Like,
yeah, it would require time that the show doesn't have.
Exactly. So for the first SmackDown, I actually understand it. I understand why, the showrunners chose to do it this way. Like, I do love Melisandre, and that was one of the twists I did not see coming, was Mance actually not being dead. But given the fact that you said that the actor is actually going around and saying that he's dead.
Oh, yeah. Well, I feel like watching the episode, like, the tip-off was that in the books, when Rattleshirt as Mance is killed, he's yelling about not being Mance.
Yes.
He's like, I'm not the king. In the show, he's clearly Mance to the end.
He's denouncing Stannis to the end. Like, he's like, you cannot change me. Like, yeah.
Well, he also wishes Stannis, sort of tongue-in-cheek, but wishes Stannis the best of luck.
Right.
Like, he's respectable.
Exactly, and that's a big difference, because Rattleshirt was never respectable. Right. Ever. So, he was kind of the worst.
Just to confirm it, like, Kieran Hines is doing the interview circuit today, where we're sure now he's dead. He's done so.
That's why we felt comfortable revealing this, like, A Song of Ice and Fire spoiler, is because if it does happen, you guys can denounce us as much as you want. But if it doesn't, which it probably won't, it's just nice to know that he's alive. Well, we're not actually sure where he is now, but he's alive at this point in the books where it is in the show.
Yeah.
So yeah. That's just an interesting little tidbit of information. I don't know. I really, like I said, that's one of my favorite sort of twists. It made me like Melisandre a lot more because I now know what she's capable of. And really, we've seen that the Red God is the only one with a ton of power, right? Like, I don't know how they harness it, but we've really seen that the Red God's got some damn power. Like,
yes.
So that's with Beric Dondarrion and with Melisandre. Like, obviously we're seeing, or Thoros of Myr, like, we're seeing all of these things. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. So that's it for the SmackDown. It wasn't really a SmackDown. It was sort of like an understand. It was like a pat down. It's like, okay, we get it. Like, we understand.
It was a joust with wooden swords.
Exactly. So overall, how would you rate this episode on a scale of beards? 1 being Joffrey's lack of stubble to 10 being Tormund Giantsbane, incredibly magical thing. How would you rate this episode, Kyle?
Wow.
I know.
This is tough.
I know.
I'm going to say an 8, and the accompanying beard would maybe be like Davos.
Oh, you came right out with it.
Like
the salt and pepper beard of wonder.
Maybe that's a 9.
That's a 9 for sure. Can I give you what I thought?
Yes, please.
Okay, so mine's like a 7.5, which is the equivalent to Jon Snow's beard, like not this season, but like last season, where it was sort of there. Like it was there, but it was sort of still growing in.
I feel like you're being generous to Jon Snow.
I am being generous to Jon Snow. Okay. Let me have this. He did great this episode, so I feel like he gets an honorable mention. So that's sort of my rating.
Mine is an 8, and it's Tyrion's beard in this episode.
There you go. All right. Perfect. There you go. So if you guys have an idea of your rating scale, which beard you thought this episode was worth, give me a shout on Twitter at YouGotPod, or if you have any questions for this episode, you can. I have to even look up my freaking email address because I don't remember.
This is good. Good start.
Good strong start. I think it's YouGotPodcast@gmail.com. And if you, that's it. You got. And if you want to hit up Kyle, how can I do that?
The best way is to follow me on Twitter at KyleLovesTV. And you can read both Sophia and my musings on TV at the website tvbinges.com.
Yes, you can. They're pretty good musings. I mean, except
Good
for the
musings.
one where I doused Mad Men in terms of Game of Thrones, but
Still haven't forgiven you.
I know you haven't. Hopefully, having you on this podcast is like getting there.
This was the olive branch.
Yes. You can find me on Twitter at Sophia M. Porter. I totally forgot to say that before. And thank you guys so much for listening. Kyle, thank you for being here, obviously.
Sophia, it was an honor. Thank you for having me.
And that marks the end of this week's episode. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to listen. I know it was a bit long, but we're working out the kinks, I promise. Until next week, and remember, the night is dark and full of terrors.